"I'm not worried about replacing you." He said it like he was commenting on the weather. No hesitation, no second thought. Just leaned back in that leather chair, tapped his pen twice on my quarterly report, and looked at me like I was a minor inconvenience he'd already figured out how to handle. That report, sitting on his desk, showed $1.4 million in 3 months. Best single quarter in Keystone Industrial Supply's 25-year history. By a wide margin. My name is Cole Hartley. I was 49 years old, senior account executive, and I had just broken every sales record this company had ever set. And the man across from me, Reed Callahan, regional sales director, age 43, was telling me he wasn't worried about replacing me. I kept my voice flat. Even with these numbers, he glanced at the report the way you glance at a menu you've already decided you're not ordering from. Numbers aren't everything, Cole. You had favorable timing. Market conditions lined up. Anyone with the right circumstances could have done what you did. I thought about the 5 a.m. mornings. The weekends I spent reading client production manuals instead of watching football. The proposals I built from scratch, each one tailored to a specific operation, specific problems, specific goals. Then I looked at the gold pen he was holding and remembered he bought it after collecting the bonus my sales had earned him. "About your commission," he said, sliding a paper across the desk. "We're adjusting to standard rates. Company policy." The number on that paper was less than a quarter of what we'd agreed to when I signed on. "That's not what we discussed when I took this position." He shrugged. "Exceptional circumstances require adjustments. The board considers your numbers an anomaly. We can't build compensation structure around outliers." Outliers? The words sat in the air between us. I looked at him for a moment. Then I said, "Understood." 2 words. I picked up my copy of the report, stood up, and walked out. What he didn't know was that I'd recorded the entire conversation on my phone. What he couldn't see was that the moment I stepped into the hallway, I already knew exactly what I was going to do. I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, back when the mills were still running. My father spent 31 years on the floor of a steel plant. He knew every machine, every foreman, every workaround that actually held versus the ones that just looked good in a report. I spent summers there as a teenager. By the time I was 17, I could walk a production line and spot where things were going to break down before they did. That background followed me into sales. I didn't approach clients like a salesman pitching product. I approached them like someone who'd actually stood on a floor and understood what kept plant managers up at night. I'd spent 20 years building that reputation at my previous company before it got swallowed up in an acquisition. New ownership, new leadership, entire sales division folded into the acquiring company structure. A lot of guys my age took the buyout and called it early retirement. I wasn't ready for that. So I landed at Keystone 2 years ago, starting over at senior account executive level, which stung a little, but I figured I'd prove the title wrong soon enough. Ride had been at Keystone for 8 years. Good-looking resume, sharp MBA from a school he mentioned in every third conversation, and he could work a room of executives without breaking a sweat. But he'd never spent a day on a production floor in his life. His playbook was simple: push the premium package, manufacture urgency, close fast, move on. His team followed that model without question. My first week, I spent 3 days studying a client's operation before making a single recommendation. Reed pulled me aside. "You're wasting time." 2 calls, close the deal. That's how we move here. I nodded, then kept doing it my way. When the Varex Corp contract came through, $890 kilo on a 2-year agreement, Reed sent a company-wide email the next morning. Subject line: "Our strategic approach lands Varex." My name appeared exactly 0 times. I let it go. When a second client renewed early and increased their order by 40%, Reed called it team momentum. I let that go too. By the end of year 1, I was managing relationships that represented 68% of Keystone's total revenue. Our stock climbed 18%. Ride received a leadership award and a 6-figure bonus. I received a branded coffee mug and a handshake at the holiday party. I told myself the results were enough. I told myself good work gets noticed eventually. The quarterly review where Reed told me I was replaceable was the moment I stopped believing that. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, a yellow legal pad, and a stack of contracts. My son Sean called around 8. He'd just finished his first month at Pitt, talking about his roommate, his engineering professor, the dining hall food, normal freshman stuff. We talked for maybe 20 minutes. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about his tuition bill, about the commission check that was now going to be a fraction of what I'd earned, and about Reed's pen. Then I picked up the legal pad and started writing. The first thing I did was go through every document I was authorized to access. Supplier contracts, territory agreements, commission frameworks, exclusivity clauses. I wasn't looking for anything specific at first. I was just reading carefully the way my father used to walk a new section of the plant floor before his first shift there. You learn more by looking slow than by moving fast. What I found took me 3 evenings to fully understand. Ride had structured Keystone supplier exclusivity agreements, so they were tied to the senior sales director position, not to Reed by name, but not to the company as a whole either. He'd built it that way years ago, probably thinking it made him the load-bearing wall. Remove Reed, the whole structure comes down. What he never thought through was the other side of that equation. The territorial exclusivity referenced the title, not the individual holding it. If someone else sat in that chair, the supplier relationships followed the position, not the person who'd set them up. Ride had spent years building what he thought was a trap for everyone else. He'd accidentally built a door. I kept that information to myself and kept showing up to work every morning like nothing had changed. The Summit industrial opportunity came up about 6 weeks after the quarterly review. Summit was the kind of account everyone in the industry talked about, but nobody could land. Their equipment purchases influenced buying decisions across the whole sector. Through a contact at Verex, I got us a meeting with their procurement team. I spent 3 weeks on their operation. Read every public filing, talked to people in my network who'd worked with Summit suppliers, mapped out their production flow from raw material intake to finished output. I found 3 specific bottlenecks that were costing them roughly $2 million a year in lost efficiency. I built a presentation around solving those problems, not around selling product. The pitch was set for a Monday morning. Friday afternoon, Reed appeared at my office door. Change of plans, I'll be leading the Summit presentation. Walter wants senior leadership on accounts this size. He paused. Send me your notes over the weekend. I said, sure. Then I sent him a clean summary, professional and organized, that covered the surface of what I'd found without touching the core analysis. Monday morning, I got a text from an old contact who worked in Summit's procurement department, someone I'd known for years from my previous company. He gave me a heads up that Reed had called Summit's VP of operations on Thursday, 2 days before telling me about the change, to introduce himself as the strategic lead on the account. Cole would be handling the supporting details, Reed had apparently said. I walked into that presentation room knowing exactly what Reed had and didn't have. He fumbled the technical questions inside the first 20 minutes. When Summit's operations team asked about specific integration challenges I'd identified in my analysis, Reed told them those were minor issues, easily managed, without explaining how or why. The room started to cool, you could feel it. Summit's people were smart, and they knew when someone was working from a summary instead of actual understanding. Summit signed with our main competitor by Wednesday. Reed called an emergency team meeting Thursday morning. He looked directly at me when he said the materials hadn't been persuasive enough and that some team members needed to focus more on relationship building than technical detail. A few people nodded. Nobody pushed back. I drove home that night thinking about my father. He used to say that the worst thing a man could do at work was make himself invisible by doing his job too quietly. I'd spent 2 years at Keystone believing the results would speak for themselves. I was done with that approach. That weekend I called Lance Weston. Lance and I had worked in the same industry for 12 years, crossed paths at trade shows, shared referrals, competed on a few accounts without it getting ugly. He'd left a mid-sized distributor 3 years ago to start his own consulting firm focused on industrial implementation strategy. We'd stayed in touch. He knew my work better than most people inside Keystone did. We met Sunday afternoon at a diner out in Cranberry Township. I laid out the situation without dressing it up. He listened, drank his coffee, then slid a folder across the table. I've been hoping you'd call, honestly. I've watched what you built at Verex and the other accounts from the outside. I put this together about a month ago. It was a partnership agreement with my name already in the header. 50-50. You bring the client approach, I bring the infrastructure. No corporate ceiling, no Reed Callahans. I told him I wasn't ready to sign yet. He said the folder would be in his desk whenever I was. The following week, something shifted at the office. Ride started showing up to client calls I hadn't invited him to. He began CCing himself on emails between me and my accounts. One afternoon, he stopped by my desk and mentioned casually that he'd heard I'd been having lunch with some clients off-site and that all client communication should go through official channels. I told him I'd keep that in mind. He stood there a beat longer than necessary, then walked away. That was the moment I understood Reed wasn't just taking credit anymore. He'd noticed something was moving and he was trying to figure out what it was. I called Sean that night. He asked how work was going and I told him the truth, that things were complicated, but I had a plan. He was quiet for a second and then said, "You're not going to just quit, are you, Dad?" I told him no. I wasn't going to quit. What I didn't tell him was that I was about to make it impossible for anyone to push me out. Over the next 2 weeks, I had quiet conversations with 4 of my largest accounts, not through company email, not on my work calendar. I met Cora Langford from Verex at a small Italian place 12 blocks from the office. I met Troy Hurst from Summit Industrial at a diner near their facility in Cranberry. The other two I handled by phone, personal cell, early morning before I got into the office. I didn't badmouth Reed. I didn't make promises I couldn't keep. I simply told each of them the truth. Keystone was moving toward a standardized 3-package model. Customized solutions were being phased out. Account management was consolidating under the sales director level. I laid out what that would likely mean for the specific implementation plans we'd built together. Every single one of them asked the same question. What does that mean for our contract? I told them that was worth reviewing carefully. Cora called me the next morning. She'd already talked to her legal team overnight. We renewed specifically because of the approach you developed for our Line 3 integration, she said. If that changes, we have a problem. I want language in our renewal that keeps you as our point of contact with a 30-day exit option if that changes. I told her I'd look into it. I already knew Dana Forsyth in legal would handle the paperwork. Dana and I had worked together on 6 contracts over the past 18 months. She understood exactly what Section 5.3 language meant, and she also understood exactly why Reed never read past the summary page of anything she sent him. He'd reply, "Looks fine, move forward," within 10 minutes of receiving a document, every single time. 4 clients, identical account continuity language in Section 5.3 of each contract, all submitted to Reed for approval through normal channels. All approved with the same 10-minute turnaround. He signed his own problem into existence without realizing it. Around that same time, Reed made his next move. He brought Bryce Dunning into our team meetings. Bryce was 27, Walter Dunning's son, recently promoted to sales coordinator after 18 months in a junior role. He was eager, not unintelligent, and clearly uncomfortable with being used as a political prop, which is exactly what Reed was doing. Having the CEO's son sitting in on meetings gave Reed a layer of protection. It also gave Reed someone to groom as a replacement for the team structure he was quietly trying to rebuild around himself. I didn't avoid Bryce, I did the opposite. 2 weeks after Bryce joined the team meetings, a situation came up with the Varex account. A technical issue in the implementation timeline, the kind of thing that could quietly become a client problem in 60 days if nobody caught it. Bryce had been CC'd on the thread. He came to me privately, said he'd flagged it to Reed, and Reed had told him to push it to next quarter. I spent an afternoon with Bryce walking through the issue, explaining the technical side, showing him how to approach Cora's operations team with a solution rather than a delay. He handled the call himself. Cora's team was satisfied. Bryce came back to my office afterward and said, "Raid told me those clients don't notice that stuff." I said, "They always notice. They just don't always tell you." He nodded slowly and didn't say anything else, but after that he started paying attention differently in meetings, watching how I worked rather than watching how Reed positioned himself. Summit Industrial called back 5 weeks later. Different contact this time, Richard from their procurement team. They'd had integration problems with the competitor they'd signed with. Timeline delays, compatibility issues their internal team hadn't been trained to handle. Richard said they wanted to reopen a conversation. "We want to work with you specifically, Cole," he said. "Not just Keystone in general." I told Reed immediately. His eyes lit up at the contract value. "This is exactly the kind of account the new team model is designed for," he said. "I'll take the lead. You handle the supporting materials." I nodded and said nothing. That afternoon, I called Richard back directly. I told him I would be his primary contact throughout the process and that I wanted to be transparent about the internal structure at Keystone so there were no surprises. He appreciated that. He also told me, before we hung up, that he'd make their expectations clear to Reed before the meeting. Reed showed up to the Summit meeting and sat against the wall for 90 minutes while I walked their team through a full production analysis, 3 specific bottleneck solutions, an integration timeline, and a cost model that justified every dollar of the proposed contract. When Summit's engineering lead asked detailed questions, I answered them. Reed contributed 2 comments the entire meeting, both general enough that they could have applied to any company in any industry. Summit agreed in principle before we left the room. $1.6 million 2-year agreement with Section 5.3 language specifying account management continuity. Reed shook hands with everyone on the way out like he'd just closed the deal himself. On the drive back to the office, he told me it was good work and that the team approach was clearly paying off. I said thanks and looked out the window. That contract landed on Dana's desk the following morning, 3 days after the Summit contract landed on Dana's desk. Owen Mercer called me into his office. Owen was 57, had been Keystone CFO for 11 years, and was the kind of man who communicated entirely in numbers. Not because he lacked personality, but because he'd learned long ago that numbers don't have agendas. His office had no awards on the wall, no framed photos with executives, just 2 monitors, a whiteboard with formulas on it. and a window that looked out over the parking structure. He closed the door and set a printed report on the desk between us. "I've been running attribution analysis on our top accounts for the past 6 weeks," he said. "Going back 2 years," he tapped the report. 74% of Keystone's total revenue during that period traces directly to relationships you originated and maintained. Not the team, not the department, you. I looked at the numbers. They were accurate. "There's also the supplier agreement structure," he said. "The territorial exclusivity language. I had our outside counsel review it this week. It's tied to the sales director title," I said.
"Not to read personally." Owen looked at me for a moment. "You've known this for a while." "Long enough," I said.
He leaned back. "The executive quarterly review is Thursday. I'm adding you to the attendee list." He paused. "Ride doesn't know yet." I thanked him and stood up to leave. He said one more thing before I reached the door. "I'm also reaching out to Varex and Summit this week in my capacity as CFO to verify certain contract terms. Standard compliance process for agreements over a threshold value." I nodded and walked back to my desk. Thursday morning I dressed carefully. Nothing flashy. Dark slacks, a plain button-down, the kind of clothes that said I came here to work. I got to the office 40 minutes early and was at my desk reviewing the Varex renewal projections when Reed walked past at 8:50. He saw me, kept walking, then stopped and came back. "Cole, this is an executive review. You're not on the agenda." "Owen added me," I said. "I manage 4 of the 5 accounts being discussed." He stared at me for a second, then walked to his office and closed the door. Through the glass, I could see him on his phone. The conference room filled up at 9:30. Walter Dunning at the head of the table, Owen to his left, Paige Donovan, the COO, across from Owen. Bryce sat near the back wall with a notepad. Ride took his position at the presentation screen. His slides were polished. Strong headline numbers, clean design, language like strategic client development and leadership-driven market expansion. My name did not appear once across 24 slides. He walked through the quarterly results for 20 minutes, the Varex renewal, the Summit agreement, the revenue growth, all of it framed as the product of his team approach and his directional vision for the department. Walter listened without expression. Bryce took notes. When Reed finished, Owen opened the folder in front of him. "Before we move to projections, I want to present something." He laid out printed sheets and passed them around the table. "This is a 2-year revenue attribution analysis. It breaks down the origination and maintenance of each major account by individual contributor." The room read in silence for about 30 seconds. Walter looked up. 74%. 74%, Owen said. "One individual. Same individual for 8 of our top 10 accounts." Reed cleared his throat. "That framing doesn't account for team infrastructure, strategic oversight, the support structure that allows individual contributors to perform at that level." Walter looked at him evenly. "Does the support structure close the deals?" Reed started to answer. Walter held up one hand and looked at Owen. Owen pressed a button on the conference room panel. The main screen split into 2 windows, Cora Langford on the left, Troy Hurst on the right. Owen had scheduled the call as a compliance verification meeting. Both of them had agreed to participate without needing much explanation. Cora spoke first. "We appreciate Keystone including us in this conversation. I want to be direct. Our renewal decision was based specifically on the implementation approach Cole developed for our operation. The continuity language in our contract reflects how seriously we take that." She paused. "Any change to that account management structure would trigger our review of Section 5.3 options." Troy nodded from his side of the screen. "Same position for Summit. The agreement we signed is contingent on the relationship we've established. That's not negotiable for us." Walter turned to Reed. "You approved contracts with this language." Reed looked at the table. "The legal review process handles those details. I rely on my team to flag anything non-standard. The approval emails came from your address," Owen said. He laid 2 printed pages on the table. "Both marked looks fine, move forward." 4 contracts total. The room was quiet. Bryce set his pen down. He looked at Walter and said, "Raid told me the Varex technical issue last month wasn't worth addressing until next quarter. Cole fixed it in an afternoon. Cora's team sent a thank you note the next day." He said it plainly, without drama. Just a fact he thought the room should have. Walter looked at his son for a moment. Then he looked at me. "Cole," he said, "what would you propose?" I had thought about this part carefully. I kept my voice steady and my answer short. "A restructured role, VP of Client Strategy, reporting directly to you. Full responsibility for existing major accounts and the implementation approach that built them. Compensation tied to the revenue those accounts generate." "And the current sales director position?" Walter asked. "That's your decision to make," I said. "Not mine." Walter nodded once. Then he looked at Reed. Reed looked at Walter for a long moment. Then he looked at me. There was nothing left in his expression that resembled the man who'd leaned back in that chair and told me he wasn't worried about replacing me. What was left was something smaller. He straightened his tie. "Keep the roll," he said. "All of it. I'm done." Walter nodded once. "Security will help you with your office." Reed walked out without another word. The door didn't slam. That almost made it worse, the quietness of it. The room stayed still for a few seconds. Owen closed his folder. Paige made a note on her pad. Bryce looked at the floor. Walter stood up and looked at me. "You'll have the paperwork by end of day. I want a client stability plan on my desk by Monday. It'll be there," I said. He started for the door, then stopped. "One thing, Cole, I expect the same loyalty from my VP that I'm extending right now." I met his eyes. "You'll have it, as long as it runs both directions." He held my gaze for a beat, then left. Owen gave me a small nod on his way out. Bryce paused beside my chair and said quietly, "That was a long time coming." Then he followed his father out. I sat alone in the conference room for about 3 minutes, not celebrating, just letting it settle. Then I called Sean. He picked up on the second ring somewhere between classes by the sound of it. I told him things had shifted at work, that the situation I'd told him about a few weeks ago had resolved, that his tuition situation was not something he needed to think about anymore. He was quiet for a second. "Did you get fired?" "No," I said. "The opposite." He let out a breath. "Good, I didn't want to have to transfer." I laughed. First real laugh I'd had in weeks. We talked for 10 minutes. Nothing important. Just father and son talking on a Thursday afternoon. When we hung up, I sat in my car in the parking garage for a few minutes before driving home. 6 months later, I stood at the podium for Keystone's annual company meeting. Revenue up 34% from the previous year. Client retention at 96%. Stock up 22%. The team had grown by 8 people, each of them trained in the same approach I'd been using since day one. Understand the client's actual problem first, then figure out what you can sell them. Walter sat in the front row. Bryce sat 2 seats down, now managing 3 mid-size accounts on his own, doing solid work, the kind that didn't need anyone else's name on it. After the presentation, Walter shook my hand and said the board was pleased. I told him the clients were pleased, and that was what mattered. About 3 weeks after the annual meeting, I ran into someone who used to work with Reed at his previous company before Keystone. We crossed paths at an industry event in Pittsburgh. He mentioned without me asking that Reed had been through 2 sales director positions in 6 months. Both short stints. The word going around was that he kept running into the same problem. The supplier relationships and client contacts he'd built his reputation on didn't transfer the way he'd expected. Turns out when you spend a decade putting your name on other people's work, you end up with a resume full of results you can't actually replicate. I thanked the guy for the update and moved on. That night, I found the recording from the quarterly review still saved on my phone. I played it once, just the first 30 seconds. Reed's voice, calm and flat. "I'm not worried about replacing you." I deleted it after that. I didn't need it anymore. Lance Weston texted me around that same time, just checking in. He said, "Partnership desk still has your name on it if anything ever changes." I typed back, "Appreciate it, don't think I'll need it, but good to know it's there." He sent back a thumbs up. That was the end of that conversation. I still think about that pen sometimes. The gold one Reed bought with bonus money generated entirely by my accounts. I don't think about it with anger anymore. I think about it the way you think about an early warning sign you almost missed. It told me everything I needed to know right at the start about what kind of man I was dealing with and what kind of situation I was in. I just needed a few more months before I was ready to do something about it. If any part of this story hit close to home, you already know why. You've sat across from someone who looked at what you built and decided it belonged to them. You've done the work, absorbed the silence, and wondered how long a man is supposed to wait before he stops waiting. Hit like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. And drop a comment below if you've been in a spot where patience turned out to be the sharpest tool you had. You're not alone in that.